So good morning. My focus, so I've been with Infosys for 20 years. My focus has been on the technology part, right? I've been a technology architect for a very long time. And for last 3 years, I have been focusing on machine learning based solutions, correct? And so as part of human centered computing, my plan is to cover not just my plan is to cover human centered computing focusing on machine learning. So hence the topic for today's session is human centered machine learning. And machine learning is a very I mean it's been there for a while, but it's been popular only in the last 3 years. Hence I'll start with introducing what is machine learning, then we can look into the human-centered machine learning aspect. Please stop me anytime if you have any questions. We'll have it as a more a discussion forum than a monologue. And you can also either you can raise your hand or you can just interrupt and ask a question, or you can post the question in the chat window. Right? I'll keep responding to questions as and when they come. Yeah. So good afternoon. I'll share my slides. Yeah, I hope you all can see my presentation, right?
Yes, sir.
This is the agenda for today's session. But first, I will start. I'll move on to the next slide because we'll come to this agenda once we look into what is machine learning, right? So we'll start with a simple example, right? What is machine learning? Now, I request you all to read this question and tell me what could be the answer. The rent per square foot for any apartment in a complex is rupees 20. So 1 square foot is rupees 20 rent. And what is the rent for X square feet? Anybody wants to try? Oh yeah. Yeah. So people have responded. Correct. It's 20x, right? Fantastic. So it's 20x. This is fine. So all the software applications that we built before machine learning were like this. A client, suppose if you are building a software for a pharmacy, the pharmacy owner or a technician will give us a logic. Instead of we doing it manually, we want to tell computer on how to do it. And so we will tell computer the logic in a way that computer can understand. And a computer understands computer languages, not natural languages like English, Hindi, or Bengali, right? And so we tell the logic to computer in a computer language, which could be C#, Java, Python, Perl, PHP, C++, or whatever, correct? Then that's how we build computer programs. So that means the logic is y equal to x into 20. So as a developer, I will know the logic, or the pharmacy owner will give a logic, or in this case, the apartment association will give me the logic. And the logic is y equal to x into 20. I will program this logic and then submit it to a computer, and then computer will start doing the job. So this is traditional software program, and this is not machine learning, right? This is clear. Now comes the tricky part. Suppose if the apartment owners, if they don't have the logic, suppose if they don't have the logic, they don't know y equal to 20x plus c, sorry, y equal to 20x, correct? So if they don't have the logic, but instead what they told me is, look, I don't have the logic for calculating rent, but typically rent is 22,000. If they tell me this, how will I find the logic for calculating the rent from X square feet with AC? Can you guys try, like how you tried for the 20x, right? Y equal to 20x. Can you try finding an answer for this problem? I know it's not straightforward. It's a little tough, but I want you all to try for a minute. Then we will see what the answer is. I'll look at the chat window also, just in case. This is 1250. Yeah, x into per square cost. Yeah, 7,000 on 7,000 divided by 250 into x. 1 second. So 7,000 250 square into square feet became 7,000. So x equal to 7,000 by 250 into x. Yeah. We are getting closer. Linkage and Anand have given answers which are getting closer to the actual answer. Anybody else wants to try before I start giving answer? I'll wait for another 30 seconds. Yeah, so I'll give an answer, but it's not easy to solve this, correct? Because the answer is not so obvious. Typically, when you have a problem like this, I mean, there are many ways to solve it. Depends on the problem. But for this problem, typically how people solve is they will plot the square feet and the rent. So square feet is your x-axis and rent is a y-axis. They plot these points. Correct, right? So square feet is plotted against rent. Then you can see that these points looks like they all fall on a same line. Then if you connect these 3 points, it becomes a straight line. Now the solution to this problem is the equation for the line. So the equation for the line is, I think there are standard techniques to find, there are standard techniques to find the equation for the line, because a line is nothing but y equal to mx plus c, and m is a slope and c is intercept. And so the answer for this particular problem is, this is how you calculate the slope and the intercept. So the answer is y equal to 20x plus 2000. Now you try it out. Y equal to 20 into 250 is 5000 plus 2000. So when rent square feet is 250, the rent is 7000. And the rent is 500. 520 is 10,000. 10,000 plus 2, 12,000. So that is the rent you get for 5,000 square feet. And for 1,000 square feet, 1,000 into 220 is 20,000. 20,000 plus 2,000 becomes 22,000. So that's the rent you get for 22,000. Correct? So this is how people typically find a solution. Suppose apartment owners did not give me y equal to 20x plus 2000. They gave me only those 3 lines. The rent for 250 square feet with AC is 7,000. Rent for 500 square feet with AC is 12,000, and the third one, right? If as a developer, I manually plot these values and calculate the equation, and then I program, even this is traditional software program, and this is not machine learning. Now I'll go to the next slide. Instead of giving only 3 values, suppose if they give me 1 lakh values, suppose Indian government want to calculate the rent logic for all the residents in India, right? The residents could be in Mumbai, could be in Delhi, could be in Coimbatore, could be in any location, could be in any village, city, could be in any location. If they want to calculate the logic for calculating the rent, right? Then that means, let's assume that you have 1 crore residents who are tenants. You will have 1 crore data. Here we have 3 data. You have 1 crore data. When you have 1 crore data, not all data will fall in the same line. Now, we cannot manually process that information. 3 we can, because we can plot, we can look at it, we can do something about it. If it is 1 crore rent, we cannot manually process. And so we want a software which can process this for us and tell us what the equation is. So I'll give this 1 crore data. And I also know that when square feet increases, rent increases. No matter at what part of what do you call town, village in India, if square feet increases, rent increases. Probably the rent will increase differently between an apartment in Mumbai and in Bangalore, correct? But the rent will definitely increase if square feet increases, wherever it is, correct? And so I know that linear regression is the technique to go for, because linear regression just says that if x increases, y also will increase. That's what it means, correct? Y is rent here and x is square feet. Now, Indian government has given me 1 crore data, and I know that if square feet increases, rent increases, then I will tell my software, look, take this 1 crore data, and I know that this is similar, this looks like a linear regression. These are the only 2 things I know about the problem. I do not know how to calculate rent from the square feet. The software program which can automatically calculate the logic to calculate rent from square feet based on the information you have given is machine learning. So machine learning will find this. Suppose in the previous example, we drew the plot and we calculated that formula. Otherwise, I can just give this 3 data and I can tell the system that it is linear regression, and system can calculate the logic by itself. It can easily find that y equal 20x plus 2000. We don't need to do that. And those kind of systems are called machine learning. And so eventually you give any x, system will give the rent for that input. Any questions so far?
Yes, sir. Any questions?
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Nazir. So I'll look at the comment also. That square cost can be tentative and close to. Yeah, correct. So, right, that's for the previous answer, right? Yeah. So this is machine learning, correct? So I mean, there are many definitions to machine learning. There are various types of machine learning. There are different kind of problems it can solve. But for us to understand what machine learning is, this is machine learning, right? So that means if you want to build a traditional software program, you have to know the logic. Y equal to 20x plus 2000 is a logic. So if you have to build a traditional software program, you have to build the logic. If you have only the data and if you know the technique to find the logic, then you go for machine learning. This is the difference between your traditional software program and machine learning. Okay. This is probably not clear. Okay. Now, before I get into human-centered machine learning, I'll probably give few examples where you might be using machine learning. Probably you would not have guessed that it is machine learning. I guess most of you would have used Google Translate to translate from English to Hindi or Hindi to English or to other languages, correct? Before 2014, all the translators, including Google Translate, they were built using traditional software program. That means a team who has expertise in Hindi and English wrote the translator. They wrote the logic to parse English statement, map it to an English word, and then form English, map it to a Hindi word, and form Hindi phrase and construct Hindi statement. Correct? So the team should know both English and Hindi, else they can't write translator. Because that is traditional software program, because there you need logic and grammar is your logic. The Google Translate that is available today, you can go and check Google Translate. You give an English statement, it gives accurate Hindi statement than any other translators. The Google Translate that is today, that is being used today, that is available today, is built via machine learning, which means The team which built Google Translate, they might know English, they don't know both the source and target languages. There's a good chance that they don't know Hindi. And they don't know, they neither told the computer that this is how you take a English statement, you parse it, and this is how you translate into a Hindi statement. They didn't do that. Then how did the machine learn? Machine learned the logic of translating from English to Hindi by itself. How did the machine learn from English to Hindi by itself? Like for rent, where we had data, for English to Hindi, they collected 20 lakh statements in English and they collected 20 lakh equivalent statements in Hindi. So they collected 20 lakh statements in English and they collected equivalent 20 lakh statements in Hindi. They collected this data set, English, Hindi, and they gave it to a machine learning model. The machine learning model looked at the input in English and target Hindi, input English and target Hindi. It looked at all the statements. Then it learned the logic of translation by itself. And that machine learning model is superior to any other traditional software model created for translation. So that is the power of machine learning. Right? There are so many other examples of machine learning, but probably we'll cover it as and when we cover the human-centered machine learning. So what is human-centered machine learning? When we design a solution, when we design a software program, we have to take human factors into consideration. How can we design it in a way that it is easy for humans to use? And vice versa, right? Take feedback from humans and then build software systems which can be easy for humans. So it's a vicious cycle, correct? So that is the logic. So I will talk about 5 key points to be considered when we design machine learning solutions for humans. The first one is, it's a very important point, identification of a meaningful problem to solve. I'll tell you, machine learning is like the magic for majority of the people, correct? So they just learn a technique. I mean, this applies to any computer program. They just learn a technique, and once they learn a technique, then they look for a problem. Now the problem might not be worth solving. Humans probably were not looking for a solution for that problem. It was not really painful for them. They were okay with the existing systems, correct? So just because we found a new machine learning technique, then looking for a problem. 1 second, just to make sure that my connection is still in there. Oh yeah. So just because a machine learning problem, just because we learned a machine learning technique and looking for a problem where you can apply the machine learning technique is not the right approach. So we have to look for a problem that is worth solving. We have to look for a problem that once we solve will actually ease the way humans operate and so on. Correct? So that typically goes through a lot of steps, right? You look for a problem and you analyze whether the problem is worth solving, whether the benefit of solving the cost of solving the problem overruns the benefit it gives, because if the cost is more than the benefit, then you don't want to solve it. Correct? Whether solving the problem will make the problem more complex or does it require more expertise than living with the problem, or the time involved in solving the problem, because there is time invested, effort invested, cost spent, right? Can it be spent on something else which is more critical, right? Can it be spent on some other problem which is more critical? So the brainstorming on picking the right problem has to be done anyway. The emphasis is most of the times we learn a machine learning technique, then suddenly we look for a problem, and then that's where we make a mistake. So we have to what you call the whole that enthusiasm to really build our first machine learning solution. You look for a problem. Once a problem is worth solving, then you try applying the machine learning technique. I'll move on to the second topic, second key challenge. If any questions, you can actually post it in the forum. Right. Demand for ML-based solutions. Now, if you look at it, demand for ML-based solutions. If you look at it, let's say we identified a problem. Probably that problem does not demand a ML technique. You can do it with the traditional software. You don't need to necessarily apply a machine learning solution to solve that problem. Correct? Just because it's what you call the latest and greatest, just because it's cutting edge, just because it is cool, we don't need to really apply a machine learning solution. That problem should demand an ML technique. Let me tell you one such problem. I guess most of you might be, given the fact that we are meeting in Google Meet, so given the fact that, I guess most of you will have a Gmail ID. In Gmail, when you open a new mail, correct, there is this feature called Gmail Auto Compose. You start typing in something, the Gmail will automatically try to complete it. It will recommend the completion statement. It will recommend the remaining parts of the statement, correct? Has anybody experienced it? If you have experienced it, can you tell me one statement that you started typing in, then Gmail automatically completed it? Can anybody say that if you have experienced it?
That is autocomplete, no, sir?
The autocomplete, yeah.
Autocomplete.
So have you experienced autocomplete? Did you type something that it's automatically completed? Do you remember any such statement?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah.
When I was sending some mail, okay, to my higher official, at that time for the first time, I just, when I was typing the like some word, like the entire sentence appeared actually.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. If we want, if it is related, then we can keep, otherwise we can change accordingly. That is for the first time I experienced that.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. So as Surya mentioned, right?
Myself, Dr. Surya Begum.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Surya. So as Dr. Surya mentioned, right? He typed the word and system figured out what is the intent and completed the rest of the statements. This is a brilliant example. The simplest example is just open and type how are. It will automatically complete you. It will say how are you and question mark. And as she mentioned, right, it also allows you to edit. You can easily replace it in case if that's not the right statement, correct? But it automatically completed it.
Sir, even in WhatsApp, I experienced this. Like whenever we are trying to like just type 1 or 2 characters, the related word will appear.
Fantastic, super. So this actually works on the similar content. WhatsApp also, it auto completes. You type, and that WhatsApp also remembers what you typed earlier. Suppose if my village name is I'm in a very remote village, right? So my village name is not popular, correct? It's not popularly known. But once I type my village name once, next time I start typing 1 or 2 characters, it automatically recommends my village name, correct? Or otherwise, as she mentioned, you type a common thing saying that like, hey, what is the plan for the evening? Shall, if I type, it will say we meet, correct? So system is smart. These are brilliant examples. Thanks. Now, if you have to build the system using rules, not using machine learning, you can keep writing code. It will never get solved because there are n number of ways you can type an English statement. There are innumerable sentences you can write in English. How can Google write a program which can actually autocomplete for all possible scenarios. The program has to learn what you typed earlier, right? It has to learn what is the first sentence, second sentence to predict the rest of the words for the third sentence. It has to know the context. It has to.
That is where machine learning plays an important role. The machine will be trained of all these things, so it will learn from the patterns whatever we will give.
Correct. Fantastic. That's a brilliant answer. That's where machine learning is important, because we trained it with all the statements from internet, in the sense from all the statements where they got permission, right? Like from Wikipedia and probably with all the other our older Gmails and everything. So the statement sort of learn the nuances of predicting the next word. Again, you might ask, how is it possible? I might type anything. I mean, how can system predict? And so it's not always accurate, but I'll give an example of where this worked earlier. We humans, right? Now today, as Dr. Surya, let's say if she starts typing something, we all can guess what could be the next word. How can we know what she is typing? Because we'll be reading the previous sentences, and because we know English and we know in general have seen enough emails in life, and we can predict. And so if a machine learning system has been trained with enough statements, if it has been trained with enough emails, even the machine learning system can predict the next word. So that is the beauty of it. So your Gmails, right? It is, I mean, the privacy is maintained. No human in Google is going to read your email. That's what your Gmail privacy states. There are automated programs which reads all our emails to build machine learning solutions. And so the Gmail was able to build a feature called autocomplete. Now, why did we discuss it now is that when we identify a use case, our first step was to identify a use case which is worth solving. The second step is, once you identify a use case, we should not force a machine learning technique into it. That use case should demand a machine learning technique, like this example of Google Autocompose. We couldn't have solved this problem even if we had employed 1,000 people and give them, I don't know, 10 years. Even if they program for ever and ever and ever, you cannot solve majority of the scenarios in English. But if you are using a machine learning solution, then probably within a year or 2 years of training, learning, and then improving, the machine learning solution can be built to solve this problem of autocompose. So hence, our second recommendation is that, first recommendation is that you identify a problem which can be solved by, you identify a problem that is worth getting solved. The second technique is your problem, the solution to the problem should demand a machine learning technique rather than be enforcing a machine learning technique into the solution. Any questions on this slide? Yeah, so I'll move on to the, if there are no questions, I'll move on to the third one. So the first question we saw, the first point that we discussed was identify a problem that is worth solving. The second point was the solution to the problem should demand a machine learning technique. Perfectly fine. The third point is how do we ensure that the user interface that we build for the solution, how do we ensure that that user interface that we build for the solution is usable enough, is easy for humans to use it? Correct? You can build any kind of user interface, but it should be simple for a human to learn to use it and to use it and to master it. It should be simple enough. we should not expect the end user to go for a class and get trained on how to use it, or we should not expect the end user to go to a documentation very often to learn the patterns or to learn all the options available in the user interface. It should be intuitive. It should be very simple. How do we do that? One, we all can sit and discuss and everything, that is fine, right? There are many ways of doing it.
Front end, we can build the front end by using so many tools are there.
You can build the front end using many tools, but how do you know which is the most user-friendly front end? Suppose you want to keep the button on the left side or on the right side or on the top or on the bottom. You want to use a button or you want to use a label. So there are many ways.
There are so many scripting languages through which also we can make all these things.
Sorry, come again?
There are so many scripting languages which we can build all these things, user interfaces.
Yeah. So there are many scripting languages to build the user interface. But my question was more on the decision to put a button on the left side or right side. So there are scripting languages which can put the button. If I know that button has to be on the left, JavaScript, I can write a code to put the button on the left or on Angular or React, whatever. If I want to put the button on the right, again I can use JavaScript or Angular or a regular HTML, correct? But how do I decide whether a button has to be on the left side or right side? How do I decide a text box has to be on the top or the bottom?
So it depends upon the design what we want to make. Accordingly, first we make the design, okay, then accordingly we are going to build this.
Correct. Fantastic.
Where exactly which button or checkbox or a radio button or a drop down list, whatever we want in the design, first we are going to plan it, and accordingly we are going to build it.
Correct. Now the question is the design, what you mentioned, right? So how do we design a system such that it is simple for an end user to use it? Perfect, right? You reach the right point, right? How do we design? How do we, during the design, how do we figure out what control has to go where? So typically, I can just say that like, okay, OK has to be on the left side, cancel has to be on the right side, or OK button has to be on the top, or cancel has to be on the bottom. I can design it however I want it. But how do we know what is the most appropriate way of positioning the buttons so that end user will find it easy to use it? I will talk about three things. One, you can look at similar applications. Suppose I want to design a chat. I want to build a new chat window. Then I will look at your WhatsApp. I will see where the buttons are placed in WhatsApp. So I will try to copy the technique from WhatsApp. If send button is represented like the arrow that you see here, right? If the send button is represented like this, and if it is kept on the right side of the text box, in my chat window also, I will put the send icon on the right side. Because WhatsApp is very popular, and people who come to use my chat window might have already used WhatsApp. And so, it is easy because they might be looking for it on the right side. Correct? They might be looking for it on the right side. And so I will put it on the right side. This is point number one.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. Here I just want to add on something. Like whatever the example now you're giving for the arrows, whether it has to be on the left hand side or right hand side accordingly to as per our need. So same thing I think I can give a live example. Like when we were asking, like I think day before yesterday and yesterday, because it was the starting sessions, some they got confused, right? Where to go? Like if we get disconnected from this session, then how we are going to rejoin through the attendance link. So that time I think Dr. Jyoti Prakash Medi sir has put up in the WhatsApp in the same way. So he has put the arrow and he has told that this is the way we have to do it to rejoin the session. So this is one of the best example I see.
Correct. Fantastic. See, that is a point. So we're glad you told that. Now we can relate, right? See, now we talk about usability. Probably I think this example, correct? See, Dr. Jyoti could have actually explained that in 2 paragraphs. He could have said that like, go to this particular web page, you scroll to the right, you do this, you click on this. He could have explained it in 2-3 paragraphs. It would have wasted so many people's time. Or he could have actually said that you call me when you have a problem, right? Then it would have wasted a lot of his time also, because he has to address so many people. Instead, he used something like what we see on the screen, probably, right? He took a screenshot and then said, go here. That is the simplest way to communicate.
Sir, we can automate also. Through the code, we can automate also. Like you are telling, wastage of time. To avoid this, on this point, we can automate the things also.
Based on our experience, because of this, we can actually follow. That is the next step. We can even automate. That's even better, because next time user will not even ask that question, because the moment they get logged off, probably there is a button that comes directly on the screen saying that, like, click this to join back the meeting. Correct. So we can even do that. That is an after effect, but that is also usability. Correct. But fantastic. These are good examples. These are good examples of how to build a usable application. Correct. In industry, they follow two more techniques. Because I build something, but what is a guarantee that that is the best usable form of building the feature? Right. So one technique is they will not build the application. They will build just mock UI. Then behind the screen, it will be a human who will be operating. Suppose I want to build a WhatsApp, right? A chat window like a WhatsApp. So I will build a dummy UI with send button. Then I will give it to somebody. Now somebody in his screen, he or she types the statement. Then it will come to me in my window. Now system will not automatically give a response. I will type something as if system is giving the response. Correct? So even before building this application, the user will experience the chat. That time I will observe the user, whether he is searching for the button, he is taking so much time to find all these options, or he is comfortably using it, or he is moving his mouse, his finger from one position to another position. Does he has to keep the phone down and then use it, or can he hold the phone and then comfortably move the fingers? I will observe all these things. Based on what I observe, I will redesign the system and again calling for the test. I will repeat this process multiple times till I am convinced that the user is comfortably using it. Once I convince myself that user is comfortably using it, once I convince myself that user is comfortably using it, that time I will freeze my design and I will use the scripting techniques and build the user interface. So this is how you measure the usability of your design.
So this is what the machine learning also does, right? Multiple times we are going to train the machine with these repeated patterns, so that automatically it will learn, and depending upon our action, then it is going to do. It is similar way it will do.
Yeah, but what the difference is machine learning typically tries multiple times and gets the right answer at the end. But for usability, typically we don't go to machine learning. So this usability is for a machine learning solution. How do you develop interface? Let's say we looked at Google Translate, correct? Now Google Translate is a machine learning solution. This usability talks about how do you build a UI for that machine learning solution? How do you build the user interface for Google Translate? So to decide on the design principles of user interface, we typically don't go to machine learning. So this is done via these kind of usability tests. But what I'm trying to say is, even if you have a machine learning solution, to build UI, you conduct usability tests and then build the UI, right? But typically we don't go for machine learning to decide on the UI. But what you told is correct. That is what machine learning is. It typically tries multiple options and to arrive at a result, but not for generating an appropriate UI design, right? At least not yet, correct? But it's almost there. We are almost there. Any other questions on usability tests?
Sir, just I want to add one point here. Like it is still not there. Like is there? Like just now you said regarding the machine learning. But one of my friend, like she is working on the same. She has taken some data set and she is working on the same thing. Like it is related to user interface. Like she was able to do it. like by repeated actions. Now it is there, sir. This thing is also there, which the machine learning can do by seeing the repeated actions and the process which has been repeated.
Yeah.
So based on that only, I just told sir, I just shared my thing because she is already doing, she's working on that.
Yeah, this is Dr. Surya, right? Yeah. Dr. Surya, the reason why I say this is a lot of people are trying various stuff in machine learning, correct? So a
Yes,
lot of people are working in machine learning. Everybody is doing something or other, right? How do I say whether something is solved or not? Is that there is one criteria.
yes, sir. Yeah.
The machine learning solution has to surpass human accuracy, correct? So suppose if it is Google Translate, like Google has done the translate, like that I can build my own translator using machine learning. Any of us can build a translator using machine learning. But my solution cannot be accepted as a solution unless my solution starts performing better than human when he or she performs the translation. So that is called state of the art solution. Correct? I can build some solution which works for few sentences but might not work for majority of the sentences. But I can still claim that I also built a translator. But it is not universally accepted because my solution is not better than a human in performing translation. Now, the problem that I told, right? Using machine learning to perform automatically decide on the usability is a research problem, and researchers have not found a breakthrough in this, right? Because if they find a breakthrough, they typically publish papers in conferences related to usability. And so this is still not a solved problem. Lot of people could be building their own applications, might have been trying various stuff, but they would not have reached the state of the art solution. If they've reached the state of the art solution, they would have released the technique publicly. There is a very slim chance that somebody solved it and they have not released it because it is not just a solution. This requires sufficient research in that field and then solving the problem. So otherwise, when we hear scenarios where we've seen it, we've experienced it and all, right? Take it with, I'm not saying that like they haven't solved it. It works for few scenarios, right? But not to the extent that where we can trust that this works for all scenarios, right? If that is the case, we all would have heard it by now, or they would have released a research paper by now, and there is no research paper which surpassed the state of the art, right? But I'm not saying that like your friend has not solved it, but it would not have reached state of the art. That's my point.
Yeah, that always it will be there, sir. Still, it is a open problem. What I said is like on one data set actually. She is working where this is a similar kind of work she is doing. So that is what I shared in machine learning.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, because you are telling related to the research. Yes, still research is going on. It is an open problem still. So different people has given different solutions, but always it will be there, no sir. Always like nobody will give a perfect solution depending upon their techniques and all. A solution will differ from one person to another person. Yeah, means one researcher to another researcher.
Okay. Yeah. No. So there is a line that people draw. Is a human accuracy, right? Anybody who crosses human accuracy, even if they use different techniques, all the solutions are accepted, correct? But if your accuracy does not cross that line, then it is still a work in progress. Okay?
Yes, sir, that is what I said. It is still a open problem actually.
Yeah.
Still research is going on.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. So we got the idea, right? So this is the usability. So my point was, if you're building any machine learning solution, give importance to usability so that humans find it easy to use the tool. Correct? Humans should not find it difficult to use the tool. They should find it the UI should be very seamless. The UI should be like very intuitive. Correct? Not seamless, right? It should be very intuitive, right? So for them to learn and use it. Correct? Yeah. Any other questions on usability? Yeah. or anybody has seen a super usable feature anywhere, need not be machine learning. Anybody has experienced a UI where they thought, man, this is the right way to use a tool. I'm finding it very easy. Any experience?
Sir, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Can you tell me a scenario where any UI, right, either via phone or through a laptop, computer, or TV, right? Have you seen a user interface which you thought is the best? You thought, like, this is I'm finding it very easy to use this application because the user interface is very simple, very easy to learn. Any experience? Any example from your experience? Where you thought this is the best user interface? It need not be software, mobile buttons or headphone buttons or anything.
Google itself, sir, it's very simple. Everyone can use Google very easily, even though they doesn't have any knowledge.
Oh man, that is brilliant. I'll use it in the next session, this example, right? Yeah, Nazir, that is the best. Actually, oh man, that is a very brilliant answer. Because I was thinking some other examples, but this is brilliant because personally, yesterday, right, I was taking a session in the office, right? That time my dad came and said that he has to do a money transfer, correct? Honestly, the options were I have to go to a bank and get the account registered, wait for a specific amount of time, enter the OTP, you confirm the payee, then you go to the multiple screens and you make the payment. Another option is to go to the bank directly and everything. Google Pay, it was instant. It supports, I'm not promoting Google Pay, but that was a brilliant example, and so I could avoid talking about it. It accepts mobile number or it accepts a bank. It's instant confirmation, registration. You enter the OTP, it gets registered instantly. You send a simple amount. The click of a button, the amount gets transferred. It works for, as of I know, all possible bank accounts, all type of banks, all type of mobiles, all type of Google Pays. That is the best user interface. Imagine people who thought about Google Pay, the technical team. So here probably they are not using machine learning, right? This is a regular program. So the technical team who is building the feature, it's a straightforward. You get the beneficiary's account, you get the sender's account, and you make the payment. So that is the same effort has been sent on every other payment gateways, correct? For all the other banks. This is the usability team. They made the difference. They made it simple. That pulled all of us to use Google Pay. Because why would I use Google Pay? I mean, if I have account in a bank, it is safer for me to use a bank app. Correct? Why would I use a third-party app? Who is Google to me? If I have money in a particular bank, I will use a bank app because it's a money-related thing. I don't want to take a chance. It's not a chat. Correct? I will actually take it. Theoretically, technically, I have to go to the bank app or a bank website to make the payment. That is the safest option. I will not use any third party. Google Pay has made it so simple that I'm tempted to go to Google Pay instead of a bank. That saves a lot of time. I can use the time to do something more productive, correct? And so this Google Pay became popular because of the brilliant user interface, which is nothing but a result of extensive usability tests done on them. Correct? That's brilliant. Anybody else can think of anything?
Just I would like to add one more point. That when we are talking about the protection and the very easy, flexible way of using this user interface, EMC is giving a service. They are providing the service where they are having a separate model for a user interface as a service. So there it will be very easy. Okay, all the available options, everything will be there just by a click of a mouse, and it will be very, very easy. Any layman can use it. They can use this as a service. So this is one of the live example of the service given by the EMC IT service provider. It is in the area of information technology. So this is a specific type of a model which they have made for the benefit of the users.
Correct. Super. So this is another example, right? So here the example we talk about an interface to build interfaces, correct? And that interface is so, I mean, I haven't used based on the example, right? So the interface is so intuitive, right? Interface is so simple that people are comfortably using it to build more and more interfaces, correct? So this is another example, because if to use that EMC's that UI builder interface, if you need to go through 1 week of class or have to read lot and lot of documentation, none of us will do it. The interface is so simple, and so without any extensive study, with simple click of the buttons, if you can try various options and can build the interface and nothing like it. So this is another brilliant example. I mean, since it is getting interesting, any third example, one last example before we move on user interfaces.
Sir, user interface, it is not exactly user interface. I may just relate this to the live example itself. Like, for example, now we are to first to attend the session, okay, early in the morning, then we have to attend to the Google Classroom, for example. Then we have to sign in the attendance. Then the second time, like whenever like we get disconnected or we leave the session, okay, due to certain constraints, and again we want to rejoin it, then again we need not go through the entire process. Just will go and just click that button, automatically it will be connected. So this is also, we can relate a kind of a flexibility which we are having in the user, and like it is like a interface I can relate to.
It's a good point. It's a good point. I'll tell you. It's a very good point. Because it is not just user interface. Now, the workflow of application. The workflow of application. What are the buttons that user has to click, and what are the different steps that user has to? Oh, okay. Yeah. So what are the different steps that user has to take, and what are the different buttons that user has to click to navigate from one window to another window? All these actions also are determined by the design team, correct? As Dr. Surya mentioned, right? So optimizing the workflow is also an important step, correct? Because as she mentioned, you logged out of the meeting, and when you try to log into the meeting again, and system remembered that you were the one who were using the system, and it was logged in with your credentials. You logged off and logged back in, probably from cookies or somewhere session. It remembered that it's you, and next time it did not ask for the credentials, because then you can join the meeting sooner because you already missed a few things, correct? So this is a very valid example. It's not just user interface, even in designing the workflow, this gets better. So that is the point, right? This is a brilliant example. So we've got, I think, enough examples, but all are brilliant. In fact, I will steal these examples for my office sessions, okay? Because these are very unique also.
Okay, thank you, sir. Because like you said, Google Pay, right? You gave an example of Google Pay. So this is also the example of Google only, where they have created this Google form.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Thanks. So I'll move on to the next slide. Now the point is, when we design a ML solution, what we have to be careful is that we have to make a conscious choice between how accurate you want the system to predict a value, and they call accuracy versus recall. Okay, so I'll tell you what it is. There are some use cases where you want to be as accurate as you can. There are some use cases where even if you are not saying the right results, but don't say the wrong results. I'll explain actually. Suppose I go to a hospital. And system, there is a system to scan my body and tell whether I have a very serious disease or not. Now, the system has to be 100% accurate in telling that I don't have the disease. Okay, because it cannot take chance there. Even if it has a slightest. Hello, are you all there, right? Just to confirm. Yeah. Yeah. So a system has to be very accurate in determining whether I have the disease or not. Correct? It cannot take a chance. It can say that I have a disease even if I don't have the disease. Then doctor will check and confirm that no, you don't have a disease. It's a problem with the system. But it cannot say that I don't have a disease when I have a disease, because then I will not consult the doctor. I will go home, but I will actually have the disease. So when you are designing a machine learning solution, you have to be accurate depending on the problem. Depending on the problem, you have to be accurate in predicting the right things, depending on the problem, right? For other kind of problem, it is okay if you make a mistake, but in these kind of problems, you can't make mistakes, correct?
This is the healthcare sector, sir, where we should be very like we want accurate answers.
Correct.
Like, so in this scenario, if you don't mind, I would like to give some examples like cancer. Because we're talking about the hospitals and all, we can take the cancer disease, where the patient will be actually will be suffering from cancer, and the result says that it is not having the cancer, then it will be a problem.
Just 1 second. I think 30 seconds break. Just 1 second.
Your voice is breaking, sir.
Guys, give me a 1 second break. I'll be back. Okay. Yeah. Sir, you all can hear me, right? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Sorry, Dr. Surya, you were giving an example, right? Sorry, can you please repeat that?
Huh?
You were giving an example about the healthcare, right? Can you repeat that?
Yeah. So, like I'm talking about the healthcare sector, where the accuracy should be very good. It should be 99.99% like that, because we know that it's very difficult to train the model. So it is in the context of the machine learning algorithm. I'm just telling, because the slide what you have shown, it is related to that only. Where the slide what you show is that is the confusion matrix. So here, when it comes to health sector, when a patient is having cancer, and if the model predicts that the patient is not having cancer, then it will be the patient, like we can say that it is very dangerous. And in the other way around, if the patient is not having the disease, and if the result says that it is having, as you said, it is correct, they will consult the doctor, and there one more clarification they will get that they are not suffering from that particular disease. But in the case of the first one, it is very dangerous. So whenever we are going to make a model, we have to stress on that point that when the patient is having the disease, it has to be correctly predicted that yes, it is happening. There, the machine learning algorithms plays a very important role.
Oh, brilliant! This is a very brilliant example, and this is these are the scenarios. In these scenarios, right? This is a very good example, right? Because you can't take chances with serious health risks, right? But in these scenarios is where how you solve is you form something called as a confusion matrix, right? That is a matrix that you plot against what is the actual whether actually the patient has a disease or not. I mean, the patients, who are come for the checkup, right? Whether they have a disease or not, and what does the system predict? So it is actually a matrix between the predicted value and the actual value that you form a confusion matrix. Depending on the use case, you decide on where to give what to give importance, whether to give importance more for the recall or for the accuracy. So that is the key message, correct? So I mean, I request you all to.
Sir, I think here two things will come. Sorry to disturb you. Recall and precision, right?
Recall and precision. Sorry, sir.
Recall and precision.
Yeah. So I mean, accuracy is used in synonymous with precision, but you are right. Recall and precision, you are right. Okay. So you have to take care of these two things, and again, depending on the use case, you might want to emphasize more on whether you want to be true positive most of the times or true negative most of the times, correct? But otherwise, note down this name called confusion matrix. When you are working on a machine learning use case, correct? So that time you form this confusion matrix, then depending on the use case, you decide on where should be the trade-off, correct? You want to give more importance to the recall or to the precision, correct? So you decide on where you want to draw the line based on the severity. Our recommendation is, as part of human-centered machine learning, the recommendation is don't ignore this step, right? So we are not recommending choose this over this, but as a developer or as a strategist, you know the use case better, but there is no standard formula to decide where to give importance to what. Based on the use case, you figure that out, but don't ignore the step of forming the confusion matrix. Any questions on this slide?
So based on the use case, like as you said, we need not make any confusion matrix. Automatically the ML will give, depending upon the model, depending upon the algorithm what we use, depending upon that, but taking that use case, it is going to show the confusion matrix and the related recall precision, S4, all the related things which are related to this confusion matrix.
No. See, the problem is not every machine learning package, every deep learning package gives the precision matrix or your error value or accuracy, RMSE value. Not everybody gives all these values for all learning algorithms, right? For linear regression, somebody might be giving, scikit might be giving, or TensorFlow might be giving it for something else actually. But for a neural network, there is no easy way to find it.
No. Sir, I said about machine learning algorithms, sir, not neural networks and all. In ML, yeah, whenever, for example, if we use random forest, one of the example I am telling, we can use the different algorithms also. So that time when we use this model, it will give the confusion matrix and recall precision.
Yeah. So now for that random forest in ML, what is the package you used? Machine learning package you used?
Sir, it is inbuilt, sir.
No, inbuilt in what?
Yeah, because I worked in Python.
No, Python is there. And within Python as such do not have random forest, correct? You would have used a Python package for machine learning. Do you remember that? If you don't remember, no problem, I'll tell.
Yeah.
But do you remember which package you used?
So Python is a language, programming language, and again it is having because it is having a very beautiful library about its own. A lot of built-in models are there. So according to our requirement, we can load and you can start using. So that is what I said. One example I am giving of random forest.
Yeah, no. So I'll tell you what I was trying to say. And that's a good point. Right? Python is a language. It supports a lot of packages. Python as such does not come with the machine learning support. We will install a Python package for machine learning. Let's say, for example, there is a Python package called scikit, SCIKIT. Let's say there is a Python package called scikit. If you are using scikit, then scikit might provide the confusion matrix, but not all machine learning packages in Python or C# or Java will give
Your sound is breaking.
that precision confusion matrix by itself. Correct? So that's what I was saying.
So your voice is not audible.
Maybe Kamal sir's network is not working properly, so just wait till he get connected.
Sure, sir.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir, it's audible. We can hear you.
Yeah. Sorry, man. My poor network connection at my end. Sorry. Okay. Sorry.
It's okay.
No audible.
You can see my screen. I'll share again. Screen.
No,
Sorry.
sir.
Yeah. In fact, I'll finish it quickly. The network, right? I'm from a very remote village. I managed to work with the mobile net, okay, but still we'll give it a shot. Okay. Yeah. You all can see the screen now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the last part is co-learning, correct? So what they say is the learning has to be a continuous process. We build an application, we give it to the end user uses, they give a feedback. So let's say the WhatsApp as an example, or Google Gmail autocomplete as an example, right? When we build a statement, when we build a statement, so the previous thing what we were discussing, right? What I'm saying is that there are different Python packages which can do machine learning things. Not every Python package will give confusion matrix. So I want you to be cautious on whether you get it or not. If you're not getting it, make a conscious effort to put the confusion matrix, correct? Sorry, the confusion matrix, correct? So that was the last answer. The next point is co-learning. The point is, if you're using Google autocomplete, you say, hey, how? It automatically says, are you? But what you want to say is, how is that? Correct? But next time, it will keep learning from you. Next time, it knows what is your traditional way of typing. Then it will act according to your needs, actually, correct? So this is called co-learning. It also learns from user, then it gives a better service. You also use the service, but wherever it is incorrect, you change it. Then system learns, actually, correct? So this is like a vicious cycle. You learn from the system learns from you. Eventually, it becomes better, correct? Yeah. So eventually, it becomes better. I'll go to the last slide and stop it there. Then I can answer questions. So this is a last slide. I would say if I know that there are majority of the people who are interested in machine learning and deep learning kind of stuff, actually. So if you ever wanted to connect with me, you can actually connect me in LinkedIn, or you can follow me on Twitter in case if you, because I keep retweeting on these conferences and stuff like that. The conferences, papers, probably openings in machine learning field, the courses available. If you ever wanted to what you call follow me, you can follow me in Twitter also. Okay. So this is my ID. This is the channel to connect with me. I'll stop here. Any questions?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Myself, Nazir. I was very much interested in the machine learning. So you had very much nicely explained, sir, regarding the linear equation. But I was expecting regarding the non-linear equation and activation functions and all that. So can you suggest me any tutorial or any material to study that? Voice is not clear, sir. Yes, sir.
Nazir, this is brilliant. I mean, I didn't cover non-linear and activation because the focus today is a human-centered part of the machine learning and not machine learning as such, right? Otherwise, actually, you can go to my Twitter account. In the Twitter account, I shared, there is a link called Andrew. There is a course by Andrew on Coursera. If you can tweet me, if you can send a direct message to my Twitter ID, right? I'll respond back with you.
Sure, sir, I will. Thank you, sir. I will definitely.
Andrew NG.
Andrew NG, correct.
Andrew NG.
Yeah, so that is the best course I've seen. And actually, it takes some time to learn. It takes 3 to 5 minutes to learn, but it's worth it. That is a good point to start.
And if you don't mind, sir, I want to add up one more point to Mr. Nazir. You can go through the Udemy courses also, which will be very good. And one author is there, my name Jose. Okay, Jose, Jose. Very nicely he will explain the different use cases.
Thank you, madam.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Personally, I will message you, Kamal, sir. Thanks a lot. It's a very good and excellent presentation, sir. The person, those who doesn't have any knowledge, also they can easily understand it exactly what machine learning is. So it's good experience, sir. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, like I would like to thank you, sir. It was really a very nice session. The way you explained and all with simple examples, it was really very nice. I hope it has reached to all the audience. Sir, I'm interested to do projects in ML. I have already done some projects. I was working as a consultant. I would my passion is to work with the projects on ML, sir, ML deep learning and all. So regarding this, I'll talk to you, sir.
Like I said, the last name, ma'am, regarding that.
My name, sir?
No. I missed the last line actually. So you said you were interested in doing machine learning projects.
Yes.
Then what was the last line? You said regarding that. Then I lost the last line.
I said regarding that I will contact you, sir. I said.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Please. Please. The time for your feedback, definitely contact me. So I will definitely.
Yes.
Are there any questions, participants? You may ask. Okay, I hope there are no further questions. So, thank you, sir. Thank you for your excellent presentation and the way you have discussed. We all learned it a lot, and I would like to give you from our entire human-centered computing team and EC department, and as a whole Guwahati University, thank you. Thank you for your session. Thank you for your time. In spite of your busy schedule, you have given it us. So, thank you, sir. It was a nice experience.
Oh yeah, same here, Dr. Jyoti. Because,
in future also, we'd like to connect to you whenever we get a good.
Yeah, definitely. I enjoyed actually. It's a learning experience for me as well. The kind of examples that you guys recommended, right? I will definitely use it somewhere else also. But please be in touch. Specifically, Dr. Jyoti, big thanks to you. Okay, it's been a good experience. We'll keep connecting. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for everything.
Thanks.